Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the Marvel Cinematic Universe comes a milestone film featuring some of the most popular comic book superheroes of all time, assembled together to fight a villain from another realm who seeks to enslave the Earth despite the team that's determined to stop him. We're talking about The Avengers. The Avengers was directed by Joss Whedon from a story by Whedon and Zach Penn. It was released in the United States on May 4th, 2012, and it was distributed by Walt Disney Studios. The Avengers is based on the Marvel comic book by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. The Avengers debuted in The Avengers #1 in September of 1963. The Avengers is the sixth film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and brings together Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hawkeye, and Black Widow, who were all introduced in the previous 5 films. The Hulk was previously introduced in 2 standalone films before the creation of the MCU. The story focuses on the main antagonist, the Asgardian god of mischief, Thor's brother Loki. Loki steals the Tesseract from S.H.I.E.L.D. to lead the alien race known as the Chitauri in an invasion of Earth. To aid him in his efforts, Loki takes control of both Hawkeye and Dr. Eric Selvig. Fury decides to put the Avenger Initiative into motion, bringing together the world's mightiest heroes to secure the Tesseract, defeat Loki, and prevent the invasion. But rather than work together for the greater good, conflicts instantly begin to arise on the team, causing distrust and dysfunction from the beginning. However, the death of someone close to them rallies the heroes together, culminating in the epic third act known as the Battle of New York. The Avengers was a box office smash, earning $1.5 billion worldwide on a budget of $220 million, making it the third highest grossing movie of all time. It was also a hit with critics who applauded the humanity behind the characters, as well as the chemistry between the cast. The Avengers spawned 3 sequels, with the heroes appearing in their own sequels along the way. Thanks to the casting, the storytelling, the action, and the drama, The Avengers remains one of the most popular films of all time, and arguably the greatest comic book movie ever made. And that's the lowdown on The Avengers. As a comic book fan, a lot of long prayers have been answered, kids, because as a kid there wasn't a whole lot to choose from. We had nothing. The only thing that we ever really had was the original Superman film, which is a classic, and I've extolled the virtues of that film many times because it deserves it, because it's hands down one of the best comic book films of all time. I still maintain that. But at the same time, after that, there was a great big bunch of nothing. I mean, we had the 1989 Batman starring Michael Keaton, classic as well. But on the Marvel side of things, it was slim pickings, okay? And it was for a good long time. Fast forward now, many years later, not only are we talking about a Marvel Cinematic Universe, but we're talking about Phase 5, I think we're getting ready to head into, or 6, something like that. A plethora of films, Phil, years and years of films. If you had told me as a child, Tom, one day there'll be an Iron Man film, I would have said, what? You could only hope, right? A Captain America film, like one that's actually good and works. Shocking. A Thor, what? No chance. They can't get Thor right. Thor's too hard. He's way too hard to get right. Well, guess what? They got it all, man. And they did Avengers. Avengers turns 9 years old this year, depending on when you listen to this. It's 2021. Came out in 2012. Phil, you and I have covered DC stuff here on the pod before. And that's, while interesting, it's not always fun. Because, you know, a lot of that discussion is, man, why can't they get this right? You know what I mean? I hate to set up like such a big lofty standard to live up to on this particular episode, but this movie, for me, is near perfect. Maybe not as a cinematic experience, you know, I don't know. But as a comic book film, maybe, it's near perfect. This movie is so good. What's your first impression of Avengers, like in terms of like, hey, this is one of the best of all time, or is it ranked for you, man?
I think it's one of the best of all time. I mean, I sat and rewatched it today, and I just was sitting thinking all of these things, like remembering getting up and going to see it at midnight when it released, and um, just all of the stuff around it, like watching the beginning credits and all this stuff, and it's just like it just really washed over me. Like this is our generation Star Wars in a lot of ways. One of those things where it's such a big cultural phenomenon that's going to live on for decades after this.
And it's so good. It looks so good. I'm to the scene where Loki's having this conversation with Thor on the mountaintop, and just the dynamic between these two guys. We saw it play out in Thor. We're going to get into this, folks, as we go. The groundwork for Avengers was laid before Avengers happened in 2012. I mean, the first Iron Man was 2008, so we had 4 years worth of films just about before we got to Avengers. And it laid the groundwork. If you had not seen those movies, and Phil, here's something. Certain people criticize the MCU, and I get it. Everyone's got their own taste, and maybe it's not for you, or for whatever reason you're weird, or you've hit your head and you don't think straight, that you don't like the MCU. I don't get it. But for those people who criticize it, one of the things they criticize is, wait a minute, man, you mean to tell me I got to watch all these freaking movies just to appreciate this one? It's too much work. Everything's too connected. I never thought I'd hear someone say this universe is too connected. Most of the time, we're complaining that it's not connected enough.
Mhm.
Like, I, when you came into Avengers, man, had you not seen the other films, do you think you would have been lost? I mean, I don't know. How hard is it to piece all this together and still enjoy it for what it is?
I don't think it was. I think that just goes to show how spoiled we are in some ways. If that's your complaint that there's too many movies to watch, I mean, I don't know. That's a bad problem to have. That there's so much material to watch. I think you don't need to have watched every single standalone movie before you watch this movie. But if you did, it enriches the experience. And then on top of that, I know people that had seen Avengers for the first time and didn't see anything before it, and it made them go back and watch everything else because they were so interested in these characters now.
Sure. And I love the comparison to Star Wars because um, this is one of those films where you can talk to basically just about anybody at this point, I think, even people who maybe either haven't read comics since they were a kid or maybe never read a comic, but they've seen this film. And you can carry on a conversation with them like, oh, I remember that film. That's a great movie. I mean, there's something here for everybody. It's the best thing about the MCU. There's something for everybody. Even if all the MCU films that have been released, maybe you only really loved one or two, but you still picked one or two out of this litany of films. There was something that still connected with you as a person, as a fan, as whatever you are. I mean, they've tucked a lot of that stuff into this. Dude, when I was growing up, again, I go back to this because in my head, you're only as young as you feel, right? Whatever. But in my head, I flash back to those days of being that kid reading comic books and just imagining, like you take the certain actors of the moment, you imagine them as the heroes on the big screen and stuff like that. But one of the things that you're kind of aware of, even as a teenager back in the day, was that, hey, look, even if this were to happen, how do you control that many egos? How do you put that many actors on the same screen at the same time? Everyone is sharing the spotlight. I mean, it's impossible. You can't do that. There'll be arguing. There'll be infighting. People will be hogging the camera. I don't think I've ever, and you can correct me if you've heard something. Let me know. But I don't think I've ever heard anything about that ever coming out of the MCU at all, especially for this film. Have you?
I know. I mean, I have seen some people that say there's too much Robert Downey, but when you've got Robert Downey Jr., you're going to use him. I mean, at the time when they got him, he was the biggest star they had.
Yeah, and he ties it all together. He was the first. He was the first one of them to get his own film, and
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I I don't feel like it's as egregious as some of the Fox stuff where it was just very, very clear that they were pushing Hugh Jackman to the forefront in every movie. I didn't feel like it was that bad.
no, I don't think so either. Even when he showed up in Spider-Man, it was like it was just enough. It was just enough where it didn't feel like he was stealing anything from Tom Holland. It just felt like it was the right mix. He and we said this before. Had the first Iron Man failed, had it flopped, you don't get the MCU,
No.
right? So give the guy some spotlight. I mean, and plus, we got to talk about this cast, man. This cast. These guys are like friends on the outside. I don't know how many of these people you follow on social media, but like they constantly comment on each other's Instagram posts and they tweet at each other all the time, and it gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling to know that these guys are friends, actual real life friends. It's so cool. Like I can't. It'd be okay if they hated each other. I guess I don't guess it'd matter. I'd still enjoy the films, but the fact that they're like buddy buddy and stuff, man, it's pretty cool. Like they were able to set whatever egos they had aside for the story because it just appears to be that they're all having so much fun. I mean, talk about Downey, man. Like, what do you think he brings to this film? I mean, the same life, the same energy he brought to the Iron Man films, right? But how do you think that impacts the rest of the cast and the characters in this film in particular?
I mean, he has the star power here. I mean, it's clear every time he's on scene. I mean, and then his humor is never forced because it always seems very natural. His charisma is all very natural. I mean, when we see him step on a helicarrier for the first time, and he does like his whole monologue, and he mocks Fury. How did he see with his
Yeah,
hand over one eye? That guy's playing Gallagher. He didn't think we would see it.
that's good stuff. He, uh, yeah, he again, folks, he ties everything together. He brings life and brings energy to the scene, chews up the scenery, as we've said many times here on the show before. It's funny because that kind of character, and what's cool is, Phil, there's so much callback to the previous movies, but there's also a whole lot of laying the foundation for movies to come. Like you can go back, like in movies that follow this, you can pick up references and things, situations, and events that tie directly back to this film, which is another example of how Marvel doesn't waste anything. They use every part of the pig, so to speak. Nothing's thrown in the trash. You know what I mean? So um, it's great, man, because like there's so much stuff in this movie. Like the fact that he and Chris Evans, Captain America, of course, they start rubbing each other the wrong way. Maybe not on the bridge of the helicarrier, but like in the scenes that followed with them, you can already feel the tension. Two entirely different personalities. I would submit that had Evans and Downey not had real chemistry, that maybe this movie wouldn't have felt right. It would have felt, over the top, cheeseball, comic book. But these two guys gel so well together, don't they?
Yeah. Isn't from what I understanding that um Downey was one of the guys that pushed Evans to push to audition for the role. Um, and I think that that's a part of what makes the MCU is. I mean, like you said, some of these guys are really friends, but it's just I want to work with this guy, and he comes in. It's the same thing with, if I understand right, like Sam Wilson was recommended by Chris Evans, right? And not Sam Wilson, of course, it's not his real name, but the man that plays Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie, was
Yes.
recommended by Chris Evans.
Yeah, I mean, and talent recognizes talent, and plus, when it's a good actor, and you, like you said, man, you want to work with him. I don't recall Marvel saying no to anybody at this point. Like, dude, Boseman got the Black Panther gig and didn't even audition. They just told him to fly here at a certain time, and we're going to move forward. He's like, all right, cool, let's sign some stuff, let's make it happen. And at the time, I'm like, I liked his work, but part of me kind of said, wait a minute, what do you mean he didn't audition? But then it's like, you know what? Marvel's hitting it out of the park. I'm going to go with it. They've not given me a reason to doubt it. And man, was I right to go with them because they totally killed it with him. Because, that's a whole other podcast that we've done. But yeah, they just play off each other so well, man. And, really, really, there's really nobody in the Captain America film first Avenger that's like Tony. And there's, I mean, maybe I guess Tony's dad, Howard, but even then they're not really the same. And then in the Iron Man films, there's really nobody like Cap. Like they're two completely different personalities, and they clash so much in the Avengers.
I mean, yeah, I mean, we're talking about guys from completely different classes as well. We're talking about a guy that has always had money, has always lived among, the wealthy and influential, and impoverished kid from Brooklyn. So it's just two totally different worlds.
Yeah, and again, you said Brooklyn. It gave me the callback to Spider-Man, where he's like, he's where you from, kid? And he says Queens, and he just smiles and says Brooklyn. Very cool, very cool. Yeah, and really, if you think about it, you can kind of see both guys' point. You can kind of see uh, Tony's point that we shouldn't trust anybody, least of all Shield and Nick Fury. But then Cap's point is like, hey, we got to work together. We have a mission. It's funny because it really does feel like that they nailed Cap's personality in this film because Cap is all about the mission. He won't even entertain the idea that something might smell bad. It's just another example, dude, I think, of how they completely nailed it for this guy.
Um, Man, I believe, like we got one Cap movie before that, and it was basically getting him in a suit and introducing the world to Steve Rogers. I feel like he becomes Cap in this movie. I mean, just the way he leads the team, just the way he expresses his opinions, just the way you don't get the feeling that he is just a government chosen appointed lapdog. He once he sees something's amiss, he immediately questions it. Um, I just feel like throughout this movie, he just embodies the role of Cap.
That's a great point, man. I totally agree with that. Yeah, he's coming into his own as a team leader, as the guy that's not going to be controlled by anybody. And we got kind of a taste of what was going to happen in Winter Soldier as well, because in Winter Soldier he has all but, I mean, he's still working with Shield, but he's really questioning things. And by the end of that film, it's obvious this whole thing's falling apart, and he's so disenfranchised by Civil War that and then of course we get the Infinity Saga, and we see a very different Captain America who's let go of all ties. He's barely wearing the suit anymore, barely wearing the stars and stripes at all. So we get the beginning of that here, where you get this idea that, okay, he's the Boy Scout. He always does everything right, says everything right. But there's a part of him that's like, just because it's the government doesn't mean that they're right. It doesn't mean that they have our best interests at heart, because Captain America represents the people, not the government. And I think
Uh,
they made that pretty clear here.
yeah, I mean, can I just one of the moments that I never noticed how brilliantly it was written and how brilliantly it was paced. I mean, Loki is by far like one of the better characters in this movie. I mean, he chews up the scenery every time he's in this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, he steals the movie for the most part. But the part when he's in Germany and he shows up and
Oh,
outside, and I mean all of this stuff, the staging of him coming and him in regular clothes, and just that entire scene in the museum is fantastic. But when he gets outside and he tells everybody to kneel and he gives the monologue, which he gives several monologues in this thing that are just incredible. Um, but yeah, he goes, you were made to be ruled. Doesn't this feel right? Like this is your natural state to kneel. And the old guy stands up and he goes, not to you, not to men like you. And he goes, there are no men like me. And then he goes, there are always men like you. And then he goes
yes.
to kill him and he goes, look to your elder, let him be your example. And then in that moment, Cap stops him. And I immediately just thought, because I've seen this movie so many times and I never pieced it, Cap's the elder, look to him, he's your example.
Oh, well done. Yeah, dude, I never put that together. I was just enjoying the memory of that great scene. It never occurred to me that they were actually saying something else. Oh, that's great. That's great. That's a good pull. Uh, what a great moment in that film. Oh my God, just the courage of that guy. Like here's this we don't know what he is. Is he an alien? What's he supposed to be? He's obviously got this power. He's threatening to kill everybody here. He's like, there are no men like me, so there are always men like you. That's, oh my God, it's such good stuff. And that scene is so cool because it leads to not only Cap appearing, and Cap says something to the effect of, last time someone stood up in Germany to rule or something, he and I disagreed. That was good
Yeah,
stuff. And
yeah,
that brings AC/DC blaring through the sound system because Tony had overridden it. Because Iron Man's got to have AC/DC, kids. That's just how this is. That's just how this goes. It's a Downey thing. That's why Downey's always wearing, like, the Black Sabbath shirt he wore in Avengers is his own shirt. Like, he insisted on wearing his own T-shirts and stuff because he's such a rock and roll guy, which I respect. But man, what a great pull that is.
yeah.
And
I had
the
never noticed
personalities
that.
coming together, man. I think the personalities coming together here's what made it click.
Yeah, I think just all of that stuff between Loki and Cap is so great before um, Iron Man even shows up. It's just, man, there are so many interpersonal exchanges in this movie that are just really, really good.
And since you're talking about Loki, let's talk about it because we can't get too deep in the weeds here without talking about Tom Hiddleston because he is utterly fantastic as Loki. And he auditioned for Thor first, correct?
I didn't know that.
I'm pretty sure he auditioned for Thor before he auditioned for
Wow.
Loki. Yeah. What a different world that would have been, right?
I don't think yeah, I don't think I could do it, man. I don't think he could do what makes Hemsworth Hemsworth. He's just so fantastic as a villain. I couldn't imagine him as
Oh,
Thor. Um I mean just everything, the way he comes in the room, the way he speaks with this gravitas, and I mean the way he'll, like, in the quieter moments he has that big sinister grin on his face. He's great. I
oh
mean,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
first
when he
line
gets
he drops is just amazing. I am
yes,
Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened
glorious
with glorious
purpose.
purpose. Just come on, man. It's perfect.
I do that. I use that as much as possible. Like we went on a cruise a few years ago, and each location we went to, as soon as we had Wi-Fi in that particular country or on that particular island, I had to get on Facebook and say, "I am Tom of the United States, and I am burdened with glorious purpose." Every time. And I don't know how many people even got the reference, but it didn't matter because I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, he looks like the way Loki is drawn in the comics, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, you gotta take a step back to look at just the brilliance of them deciding. In the original Avengers comic book, Loki was the thing that brought the original Avengers together, and that's what exactly happens in this movie. He is the factor that brings them all together.
Yeah, and the idea that he allowed himself to be captured. And
Oh man,
yeah,
oh,
until that's said, had you even thought about, wait a minute, yeah, it was. He just kind of sat on that rock and let them fight, and then he let them take him. Did that occur to you during the course of the movie, or didn't it occur to you till later?
I mean, he gave up really easily when Tony showed up. I didn't think about it because there's so much going on in that scene.
Yeah,
Like, there's so many smoke and mirrors. He is, of course, distracting them while Hawkeye comes in and steals what is it, vibranium he stole from that vault, um, and then takes it back to Selvig, and they continue to build the machine. So
yeah.
his entire thing is his entire mission to, misdirect them. Even if it wasn't the plan to get caught, it was always a misdirection.
Oh yeah, sleight of hand, which he's very good at, and he thought he was getting one over on Natasha, who we'll get to in a bit. Uh, But turns out, just like in the beginning, the opening sequence of this film for Black Widow, when she's tied to the chair and she's telling Coulson over the phone, "This moron's giving me everything," and the Russian's like, "I'm not giving her everything." It's so great, and she gives him this look like, "Really?" Like she's tied to a chair. She's in a cocktail dress with no shoes, and she's in complete control of being interrogated and being threatened to be killed by these Russian mobsters. And then she talks to Loki, and it looks as though he's getting the best of her because she talks about I have red in my ledger. I'd like to wipe it out, and he really comes at her hardcore. And then he mentions the monster, or says the word monster, and then she turns around and says, "Oh, so that's your play, okay?" And you're like, "Oh my God, she played him. She just did that to see where he was going with his plan." Such a brilliant move there.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of the same thing with Nat, even more than what I said with Steve. Nat didn't have her own movie. She just had the cameo in Iron Man. Um, and so in this movie, I felt like all of the moments she got on her own, she excelled. Like she was great in the beginning when we first see her. She's great in that exchange with Loki. Just completely played him. Then I mean, she's great in some of the other stuff with Clint. The fight with Clint is fantastic. I thought she was great throughout this movie.
Yeah, she's awesome. I love the fact that all these characters bump into each other, and that's great. And you kind of expect it because it's an ensemble cast. But what maybe you don't expect is how well they bump into each other. I don't know of any scene in this film where I'm like, that was awkward. That didn't feel right. That was forced. That was contrived. I mean, dude, I can't think of one scene. Like, every time these characters encounter each other, no matter what scene it is, you feel like there's no time that's been wasted. It's just that good. And that's testament to the actors, but it's also testament to the story writing, the direction, which we'll get to in a bit also. I mean, and dude, you and I are pro wrestling guys. You know that to have a successful baby face, you need a devious heel. The fact that Loki is so charming that you're so entertained by Hiddleston because he's so great, and Loki's entertaining. However, they made a point to say that he's murdering people. They show him killing people, and it's important that you see that because he can't get so over with you that you like him. You got to know he's the villain. I think they established that pretty early on here.
I mean, everything he says is a knock at everything we're supposed to believe in as people. I mean, his his a very initial monologue is when he was saying, freedom is life's greatest lie.
Yeah,
It's like it's such an awesome line, and it's so well done, it's so well executed. But at the heart of it, it's like, well, no, this is an affront to everything you should believe in as a human being. Um, and it's just everything is he does is pretentious. Everything he does is the way that you would think a god would speak to us. Like, you're beneath me. Like, you are beneath me. You are here to be ruled.
yeah,
Um, and it makes all the sense in the world. He's not speaking to you like a king. He's speaking to you as someone who is above board. And it's not just that. This is the first time we see him outside of Asgard and among people that are mortal. And they're trying to fight him at the beginning of this movie, and he's just like basically flicking them away like fleas. And in his world, he's seen as weak among the other Asgardians, but here he is above them.
yeah. No wonder yeah, yeah. No wonder he'd want to rule Earth because there's no one here like him. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everything he does at the very beginning of this movie, all of his lines are just fantastic. And I mean, I think it speaks to, if you're gonna put together this ensemble cast of characters that can do all of these really cool things, you've got to have a guy that can act as well as Tom Hiddleston can, and can come in and steal a scene among all of these people.
Because it's a tall order. And
Yeah,
it's a big ask because this cast is so good together. But yeah, you're right. Every time he's on camera with any of them, you can't help but watch him.
yeah. I mean, for sure, he has several moments in this thing where he is just. I mean, I'm telling you, he all but steals the show throughout this entire movie.
Yeah, it's a production for him. I mean, he's the Avengers of the stars, but he's the real guy at the top of the food chain here. Uh, I'm gonna jump to some. I'm not gonna jump to Scarlett Johansson right now, but dude, Jeremy Renner, for crying out loud, I am so tired. And I can't say that I've never been on board with the anti-Hawkeye, a crew that still exists out there. But at this point, for God's sake, kids, let it go. I mean, no, they didn't kill him. Yes, there's a reason they kept him around. Number one, Jeremy Renner is an excellent actor. Number two, he fit this film, regardless of what anybody says. He fits the Avengers. There is nobody on this team. There's nobody on this team, with the exception of maybe Cap, that the regular blue collar working class guy in that theater is going to be able to relate to besides Hawkeye. Apart from the insane archery stuff and he's a CIA killer. He's got a family. He lives on a farm. He looks like a regular guy. He's not a god. He's not a billionaire. He wasn't frozen in ice for however many years. He doesn't turn into a monster.
Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you.
I mean, dude, where are you on the Hawkeye thing? Are you Team Hawkeye? Are you like, why is this guy still here?
I think Hawkeye. I think it's easy to have complaints with Hawkeye in this movie because he is kind of set dressing in a lot of scenes, and because the cast is so big, somebody was going to have to take a lesser role than the rest of the cast and he didn't have his own movie. He didn't have anything else to build on. He is a supporting character, but at the same time, when you've got a guy that can shoot a bow and arrow next to Thor or next to Iron Man, you're going to take a back seat because visually you're just not as interesting.
Right.
And I think people miss that part of it. I think people are like, well, he's the most boring character because he's just this spy guy with a bow and arrow. And it's like, yeah, on the surface. And I think that's why it was smart of them to do the stuff right out of the comic where he was a bad guy at first before he became an Avenger. And they did it in such a smart way with the mind control stuff. And I don't think Clint became Clint, an interesting character, until the second movie. But yeah, Clint in the second movie, I was sold after the second movie. I really enjoyed him in the second movie. I think a lot of his parts in the second movie are just great. Him taking the taser arrow and shocking Wanda and going, not today, been mind control before, not doing that.
Yeah.
Or the whole speech to her when she was ready to give up, and he's like, look, we're on an island. There's a flying island, there are robots, and I have a bow and arrow. But if you go out that door, you're an Avenger. And that whole speech is Hawkeye to me. It lays the ground for what we know about Hawkeye in the comics, that he could lead the Avengers if he wanted to.
Oh, man. I don't know that I've ever thought of that, but you are totally right. I think he could lead this team. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see what his show is like. I think a lot of people are going to change their tune when the show comes out. I just think he needs the time, like Wanda and Vision and some of these other characters, to have the time to get that screen time to get you to like them. Because I knew a lot of people that had complaints about Wanda, but now Wanda's like one of the most beloved characters in the MCU.
Yeah, well, like you said, change their tune. They've done that. To your point, he is window dressing in this film, and he is not written as a primary character. He's written as a secondary character, and people complain. However, if they tried to write him as a primary character, people would have complained about that too. So the same thing they're upset about, the fact that he's here, is the same thing they'd be upset about if he was here but written it bigger. Like,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've only got 2 hours to do this thing.
sure.
You cannot give way too much time to Hawkeye right away, and I get that. You weren't going to give him his own movie straight away. This was just a way to put him on the team and get some kind of interest in him. let him do some cool things. He did plenty of cool things in this movie. I don't care what anybody says. He did some really awesome things in this movie, um, and give people a chance to get interested in him.
I mean, his archery is superhuman. It's almost like he's a mutant. It's almost like he's got an innate ability. Like his mutant ability is targeting, like to anticipate where you're going to be before you're there, which is how he uses his archery. Uh, and again, it's CG. There's no arrows in the quiver, folks. For most, unless it's like an extreme close up, he's pulling nothing out of the quiver. It's all CG'd in later, and that's fine. But like you look at it and say, well, it's too slick. I've read that. It's too slick. He's a shield. He's assassin. Okay, he's a shield agent. He is top tier, top level, black ops. I mean, high clearance. He's trusted. He's been around for a long time. He's extremely good at his job. He's covert. He's in and out before you even know he was there. He should be smooth. Don't you think he's portrayed exactly the way a character like that should be portrayed?
I mean, there's a few things that stand out. He, in the museum part when we talked about earlier, when all of those guards are on top of the building, you just see the arrows coming in and taking them out, and you never even see him before he comes and jumps in. Oh, that was really cool. Yeah. The scene that I always pop at, and when he shoots the arrow at Loki, and Loki catches it, and he sits there for a second, and it blows up. Awesome every time I see it. Or yes. Or when he shoots the arrow into the room in a helicarrier, and it hits that thing, and then the two sides come out, the prongs come in and deactivate the entire helicarrier.
That's great stuff.
Took down an entire helicarrier with a bow and arrow.
Dude. It's almost like they're telling you, yeah, he's important, and we're going to show you how important he is. Try arguing with this. It's almost like they're making a point to shove it in your face and say, look, he's necessary. He's important. He's important here. He'll be important later. Get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of really awesome things in this movie. Of course, the no-look shot. That was awesome.
Yeah. As he's talking in his earpiece, he's talking to a Black Widow, I think. And just over his shoulder. So good. He's grown on me. I'll tell you that I've been part of the chorus. And when they announced, well, it's Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos, I'm like, wait a minute, they're going to space? He's dead. He's so dead. Hawkeye in space. Is he going to be floating around shooting an arrow with no gravity? This should be interesting. Are the arrows anti-gravity? We'll see. Spoiler alert, he made it. So
yeah, but that's why I said Age of Ultron was the movie that really got me into Hawkeye. This guy is Hawkeye. They did such a great job with the misdirect. By the time you're thinking the entire movie, he's gonna die. Somebody's gonna die, and it's gonna be him. And when he doesn't, like, I let out a sigh of relief because I just thought for sure he's gonna die.
I mean, at this point, if you kill him now, that would be felt. Don't you think? You think the tide has turned in the guy's favor, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. But I mean, man, I can't imagine several scenes throughout the MCU without Clint in it. He just, I mean, I feel like he grew into the role more and more the more he was there. I mean, all the way to Civil War. I mean, hey, Clint, I don't care.
Right.
Or when he's in jail and he's monologuing Tony at the end of Civil War. I just think he's gotten better and better with each movie. I think that, like I said, his show is going to be interesting because I think Renner's a great actor, and I think with the right material, I think you can do some cool storylines with him.
Yeah, and dive a little bit deeper with him, which is good because the connection that he and Natalia have, or Natasha, excuse me, it's a pro wrestler side coming out here, kids. But the connection that he and Natasha have is, have they ever said that they were romantically linked? I mean,
no, but you have the great line in this movie where she's talking to Loki, and he goes, "Is that love?" And she goes, "Love's for children. I owe my debt."
That's good stuff. What a great comeback. Yeah, I mean, they're close like family, maybe closer than coworkers, but not close enough to say they love each other as in a physical or sexual relationship. It's deeper than that, maybe. We
Yeah,
don't know that until Infinity War happens, then we see it, and then especially Endgame. Endgame is what I'm thinking. That's when we really see it.
right. I think that right away, I think everybody assumed, oh, Nat is attached to this person. She's attached to that person. But I just think that that just goes with the mystique of the character and how she is just good at throwing you off the scent of who she really is. Like she never really lets on until maybe a little bit of this movie she shows a little bit of vulnerability. But even when she shows vulnerability in this movie, she uses it as a weapon to trick Loki. So we don't really get like real Natty until deep into like phase 3, phase 2.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Even in the moments when she first goes to Banner near the beginning of the film, and he says, "What about the little girl? Is she an actress? She a spy too?" You started this young, and she goes, "I did." And he says, "Who are you?" And she goes, "Natasha Romanoff." And the way she answered, it was very innocent, very girly, very young. The way she answered, and it was a very quick moment. And watching it again, I'm like, man, that was so good because it was like she was letting her guard down, which I think is why they went with the connection between her and Banner in Age of Ultron, because they're suggesting, she got him on the team, he hulked out, and the second before he jumped up, he stared at her in the eyes, and they had a connection. And you're like, oh, there's something happening here. And then in Age of Ultron, he wants her to leave with him. Remember, it's like, let's just go anywhere. And of course, she's Shield, man. She's got a mission. She's got to go through with it. But you're right, dude. Anytime that she looks vulnerable, you can't tell if it's her. I mean, at what point is she really Natasha? I mean, you can honestly pitch it all the way up to Winter Soldier and say, was that really Natasha that was with Steve when she let her guard down, or was that still an act? Like, I actually love the fact that you don't really know about her.
Yeah, I mean it's Master Spy 101. Like everything is a put on. And I
Yeah.
I think that some people have misread that. And I mean some of it could be of course unintentional. I just think the way that they've built her character over a few movies, I think that it's done a great job of making her into a multi-dimensional character in my opinion.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about it a little bit more here. Scarlett Johansson, folks, as we know, is Black Widow. At the time of this recording, the film has not yet come out. I can't wait to see it. I'm anxious to see it. Probably the first film I go to see in the theater since the pandemic started. We shall see. We shall see. But I'm so anxious to see this. And man, we said before here on the show about the MCU that it's like, how many of these roles have we said you only could have got this person to play this character? I don't know who in the world besides, and maybe there's an answer, and maybe she would have done great. But Scarlett Johansson, man, is so good at what she does in almost everything she's ever been that I've ever seen. But man, she's a perfect Black Widow, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand some people that felt she was miscast. I just think that there's so many moving parts. The two people that are the most human were gonna get the less to do in the big group movies. Um, and I think over time they did better of a better job of giving her character and giving her things to do. Um, but I mean, if you're looking at stars at that time, and we're talking about like Oscar worthy stars at that time. She was a huge name, and that was going to get people interested in this cast. So it made tons of sense to me.
I can't say that I've seen a lot of sort of anti Johansson stuff. Not as much as I've seen anti Hawkeye stuff.
Oh, there's tons of Johansson stuff. Are you kidding me? Like
Oh
especially when
man.
she took the Ghost in the Shell role, and people were mad at her about that.
Oh well, now I kind of get that. I kind of got that when it happened. I'm like, wait, who's gonna play it? Her? Like, I love her though. I can't help it. I love her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
She's so
again,
good.
I think she's one of those things that I just couldn't imagine the franchise without her. Just because we've been doing this for so long, and it's been just such a fun ride. Like I just couldn't imagine this cast without her in it, or Renner.
Yeah, and it's funny because you watch some of those press junkets for the Avengers films, and no one gets the questions about staying in shape for the suit like she does. And like there was
Yeah,
some D-bag person that asked her a question, and man, because this whole cast is charming and full of good people who aren't necessarily rude or standoffish. She rolls her eyes real quick and she tries to smile, but you can tell it bothered her. And I'm like, because she's the woman, she's getting this question about staying in shape. For what? And you know what they're getting at. You're a woman in tight leather, spandex, or whatever. Come on, man. You know?
yeah, that was weird. I mean, there's been some weird press moments um, in MCU. Like I don't know if you remember the whole Renner thing when they talked about his relationship with Black Widow, and he gave that very strange answer, and he ended up having to apologize about it later.
Oh, man. I don't know if I might be blanking on that. What did he say?
Oh man, it was bad. He was sitting there, and then Chris Evans was sitting next to him, and he was laughing at him, and he was saying something like, "Oh well, Nat goes with everyone. Like she's kind of
Oh.
you can draw the lines of what he said. And I'm like, okay, he should have
Oh.
said that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I
That's
think he
that's
thought, I'm joking, but nah, he shouldn't have said
right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Getting too comfortable with each other, and it's all harmless fun, but then it's taken, and yes, yeah, I get it. Uh, yeah, she's great. I love her. And this I don't mean this to sound any way, but she looks great in the suit.
that. So I this is a hilarious one. I've seen a lot of people with the takes on the wig in this movie. Are you a short hair natty or are you a long hair? I am personally of the belief she looked best in Winter Soldier with like the longer hair.
I agree. Um, I would think from a secret agent perspective, shorter hair would make the most sense. But then again, if you're a woman, you can disguise yourself with all different kinds of wigs, so it probably wouldn't matter if you're bald. That probably would make a difference.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, I get it. The look that they're going for in this movie is the second Black Widow, who's actually blonde, but she has like the shorter, curlier hair that's in that same hairstyle. So it's like they kind of blended those looks for this movie.
I actually like the longer hair with the curl in it,
Yeah.
so I'm actually partial to that. So, but she's great, and does it bother you she doesn't speak with a Russian accent?
No, I would rather her just speak regularly than she tried to put on some horrible fake accent. It
Right.
probably would have sounded really bad. It doesn't bother me. I think she spoke Russian at some point at the beginning of the movie. Um,
Yeah, she did.
but yeah, I would rather her just use her an Americanized accent and not give us a terrible accent.
Don't fake it. Um, let's talk about Banner. Um, I am no, I have had a couple of different notoriously bad takes on the comic book genre when it comes to the movies. One of my first, maybe my first notoriously bad take was they're getting Heath Ledger to play the Joker. Great. Like legit, that was no kidding. Hey, listen, it's been recorded. I own it. I'm not gonna run from it. I said, what? This guy is the what? Well, I ate my words, kids. I was dead wrong. I admit it. when they announced Mark Ruffalo was because the whole thing with Ed Norton fell apart. To his credit, he wanted to do it, but supposedly he wanted more creative control over the character than they were willing to give. Um, my response to that is let him have something, but no, he can't determine the whole thing. You're part of an ensemble cast. But he was very gracious online when he announced he was not going to be part of the project. He was moving on, and he wished them luck and everything, which I thought was very classy. So when they said Mark Ruffalo, the first thing out of my mouth was, "Oh, the chick flick guy, great." So the chick flick guy is going to be the Hulk. Okay. Now remember, Phil, I had previously forgotten my dumb take on Ledger as the Joker. I was dead wrong about this because he's he's human, he's quirky, he's got a sense of humor. He kind of looks like he could be a nerd, like a nerdy scientist, but at the same time he's a good-looking guy, so he's kind of a mix of everything. What's your take on Ruffalo as Banner in the Avengers?
Oh man, I really believe Ed Norton was one of those missed opportunities.
Yeah,
It just sucks that everything didn't come together. I really enjoyed him in the Incredible Hulk movie, and I think that movie is kind of underrated. I liked it a lot. I liked what they did with it. With that said, like this is the first movie we get Ruffalo in, and I thought Ruffalo was great in all of the moments where he's just Bruce. I mean, I think there are several times where you get the glimpses of his relationship with Tony, and it's really good stuff. They play off each other really really well. Yeah, I mean there's a few scenes that he just does like little small things, and it's such great character work. I mean, when he slams his hand on the table
yeah,
and he yells, "Stop lying to me!" and she gets scared, and it's like, "I'm sorry, I that was me." It's like all of that stuff is great. His acting in the helicarrier scenes was fantastic. Um, and I don't know if we said it already, but I don't care how many times I see the helicarrier coming out of the water and rising for the first time. It always looks amazing.
it's great. It's so great because it looks so good. Like you know, I'm sure you've seen bad CG. I know I have. There's nothing bad about that CG, man. It looks so good.
I mean, we keep hearing shield, shield, shield for so many movies, and to finally see a helicarrier, it's such a great moment.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I loved it, man. It was awesome. And to your point, hearing about this, covert shadow organization, but they're huge. They're government. They're defense. They're this. They're that. They've got a reach all over the world. But then to see them at their full power, like the only real shield that we knew was Nick Fury and Agent Coulson. That was really all we had till this movie.
Yeah,
Man, how ambitious is it? Forget the fact you're doing an Avengers film for crying out loud. You're gonna do helicarrier? And like what, dude? That to me is roll your sleeves up, boys. We're gonna make this movie. I mean, to me, that oh my god, what a great if nothing else for the fans to see that. Oh, that's so good, man. It's crazy.
yes, yeah. I mean, yeah. I think they did a great job with all the shield stuff. I mean, man, I did not think that they were going to delve that deep in the shield right away. I mean, you could set it across the MCU when we finally see like the Triskelion and we see the like all this stuff in Winter Soldier. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Um, yeah, I mean, even sitting and watching this movie and noticing Sitwell is in the movie, and I was like, oh, Sitwell.
And their ability to get the same actors, so you're interconnected. It's only been a few times they've had to recast for whatever reason.
Yeah,
Um, and when they recast, it works. It typically works. But even the secondary characters, I don't think they've had to recast any of the secondary characters. So to see them pop up in the same films, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I remember that guy from the other one.
yeah, yeah. I just think like, yeah, I don't want to go too far off the Hulk stuff, but I'm just sitting here thinking all of the stuff like when Cap goes in that room, he uncovers the box that has all the old Hydra tech in it,
Yeah.
and just how well that scene is staged, and just how everything like all of the mistrust in Shield is built is done really really well.
Yeah, in that 1 second, you see that, oh, they are powerful, they are big, but they're too big. You know,
Yeah,
it's like you're reminded they're government. They are not of the people. They are of the government, which means they feel the need to, basically, man, it's almost like what Loki said at the beginning of this film. Like, it's a power bigger than you. You're meant to obey. You're meant to serve this power. It's kind of what I don't know, man. It's kind of what Shield are setting themselves, or what they're setting up Shield to be in this film. And Fury can't really see. I mean, he justifies it, but he can't really see the danger. Um, Something about Banner before we move on. If this and we presume to believe that this is a continuation of the Ed Norton Banner character from the Hulk. Okay, in that character, Ed Norton's on the run. He's got to be careful. We see at the end he's timing his breathing, he's controlling, and then at the very end of that film, he opens his eyes and they're green and he's smiling, and you're like, the end of that film is so good. Because you're like, oh my God, he's controlling it. And you're like, I can't wait to see what happens next. And then nothing happened. Because but they said, okay, fine, we're going to continue it here. Dude, Banner is in full control. Up until the time that Hawkeye and the guys attack is the first time he loses control in this film. And it's the only time. Because when he hulks out near the end, he's in complete control. I mean, this is a far cry from the Ed Norton version, which was still trying to understand how to get a hold of this. This Banner has gotten a hold of it.
yeah, yeah. Because the only reason he hulked out on a helicarrier is because he got knocked out,
Yeah.
and then Hulk just took control. So when we do get like the big moment of him, that's my secret. I'm always angry, and he punches. It's so good. He takes out this entire thing with one punch. Um, yeah, just I think Ruffalo has become better and better with each movie. He's definitely one of those guys that I wasn't that high on to begin with, but I think he's been fantastic for the franchise.
Agreed. 100% agreed. I didn't think it was much. Again, I go back to the announcement of the signing and thought I was the chick flick guy. I completely misjudged his ability. That's on me. To the point now when he does something outside the MCU, I want to watch it because I totally didn't give him enough credit. And that's on me. One day I'll learn, maybe. Dude, we talked about Cap and Iron Man having the relationship and the back and forth. I don't know if I saw it coming with Stark and Banner, but they connected that really quick in this film. And it does make sense that you got these two guys who, from a female perspective, are not hard on the eyes, right? But they're both at their core a couple of nerds, and I love that you get that in this film, and it stays through the entire run of the MCU. They keep that connection, which is very cool. Like up until it was Iron Man 3, he's telling the story of the film. And at the end, you realize he's been telling Banner, who's been sitting on the couch or on the chair or whatever. And he's like, were you sleeping just now? And he says, well, I mean, I'm not that kind of doctor, which is so funny,
Yeah, I mean, just having their relationship be the through line of this entire movie, and to have him say, listen, that much radiation should have killed you. And he was like, so you're saying it saved my life? And he was like, for what? And he said, we'll see. And of course, the we'll see is that he saves Tony when he falls out of the portal.
Oh, man, you're connecting the dots, dude. Very well done. Yeah, very well done. That's what, yeah. And of all the people I mean, you see him falling out of the sky. I mean, what's Cap going to do? But Thor could have swung his hammer to get up there. But Hulk is the one that went up there to get him.
I think that the only person on the team that was reckless enough to not just see Hulk as a villain, but to see Banner as a guy that we can use. Like, he should be a part of this team. And you can make a case maybe that Stark is manipulating him as well, but he still always saw him as a guy like, we need him here. Like, he's our big gun.
Oh yeah, and you're right, man. He's as high on the Hulk as he is on Banner. Um,
Yeah,
Especially the scene where Loki confronts him in the Stark Tower, and he says, "I have an army." He says, "We have a Hulk." Like it's great.
yeah. I mean, they have several moments throughout the franchise where their relationship is just one of the better relationships on a team.
Oh, for sure. And I love the fact they have this connection. It's a connection that makes sense. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like, well, the two brainy guys need to be together here. It doesn't feel like that. I think one of the reasons this movie works in so many different ways is because of the connections. It's not it, it's not in spite of a cast that could have ego. It's the fact that this cast does want to have fun and does want to be together, and they enjoy each other's company. Again, if one of them is a complete jerk, I've never heard or read anything about it. I've never heard anybody say, "God, I want to work with that guy again." They all seem to get along. I mean, it's got to mean something for the success of the film. And plus, you're sitting in the theater watching this. I know you can feel it. I think everybody can feel it. Man, this is fun. This is not, Ben
Yeah.
Affleck and Henry Cavill on the press junket for Justice League, and Affleck looks like he wants to hide under a couch somewhere because he's miserable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I mean, all the way to I'm telling you, when we get all the way to Endgame and they roll the credits and then they do that great sequence where they put all of the main six on screen and they
Oh my
put the
God.
autographs up there, and just watching how a theater just gives like a standing ovation to the original cast, because that's just how much they mean to people at this point, because they have this connection on screen and it seems like it's a legitimate friendship outside of it.
Yeah.
Um, Man, I mean, even in this movie, the way they pace this thing out, we never see all six of them together on screen until we get that great revolving shot. And so when we get the revolving shot, it's so rewarding. I mean, even before that, when we get the suit up montage, when everything seems lost and um, Cap comes in the room and he goes, "You got a suit up," and then
Yeah.
it hits like the Thor, raising his hammer to put his armor back on, and it goes around and shows everybody suiting up. It's so good. I get goosebumps every time I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Up to the scene where the fighter plane has come up to the helicarrier and the Hulk, and they start spraying the Hulk with bullets, and he turns around and jumps out of the freaking window to take the plane down, and that pilot's eyes get huge, like, oh crap! I mean, dude, that's so good.
Target's angry. Target's angry.
Yeah. I'm popping like a kid, man.
Oh, and then when he tries to eject and he grabs him, so he ejects.
Yeah. Grabs him and just heaves him. Oh, it's awesome stuff. He just did it. It's great.
Have a product or a service that you want to get out into the world? Always wanted to try your hand at podcasting but don't know where to start? We've got you covered. Pod for Hire is a podcast production company that offers turnkey services to fit your needs. We produce your show from start to finish, allowing you the valuable time you require to focus on your established clients as well as prospective clients. We pride ourselves on delivering a top-notch product that will set your business apart from the rest and give your company the exposure it deserves. For more information, give us a call at 1-828-800-9880 or email us at info@podforhire.com. Pod for Hire. We take the work out of podcasting.
Yeah, man. I tend to watch stuff that we talk about, whether it's a show or a movie or a game or whatever it is we're discussing on any given show. But yeah, sometimes I got to stop and acknowledge what I'm seeing. Um, the fact that this cast, like you said, does get along, they mean something to fans. I mean, without them, without this movie, there's no. I mean, this movie, which is something I haven't said yet, and here we are coming up on the hour. Um, this movie did what I don't know if any other movie that had ever done, was tie together other films into one. And taken what had been laid before and tie it together. It's a comic book. The whole MCU is a series of comic books. You've got the Captain America comic book, the Iron Man comic, the Thor comic book, and then the Avengers comic book, and everything ties together. We got to finish talking about the main team here. Both Chris's, Hemsworth and Evans. We've touched on both of them a little bit here. Again, they're both perfect. Hemsworth is, the grand, I'm a god and all this stuff. But, the fact that he grew up and matured in the first Thor movie when he started off that film as being egotistical and I've earned the throne is mine. I'll be king and all that stuff. And then by the end of it, he's humble. He's down to earth. He's in love with a woman from Earth, for goodness sake, and he understands that he serves the will of the people. I mean, and then Cap, who's again Boy Scout, soldier, country first, country last. In this film, learns, no, don't trust the government, man. You don't know what they're up to. I mean, I feel like both characters have come such a long way since their respective debuts, but they both, of course, fit in this film too.
Yeah, to me it's interesting watching Chris Evans just become Captain America. Like, he is perfectly cast. I mean, when you see him interact online, you see other things he does. It's just like he just still is Cap. Like, he is the embodiment of everything we want to believe in. And like, he has never stopped being that for me. It's wild. Like, I mean, he's one of those castings where it's like, okay, I've seen him in this, I've seen him in that. He might be okay, but I mean, he was perfect. I mean, I don't think you could cast a better Captain America.
Yeah, he's so good. And funny thing is that when they announced he was going to be Cap, I didn't have a problem, but my comment was, "Hey, he was the Human Torch." And
Yeah,
like, Evans was in shape, but he wasn't like pro wrestler in shape, like bulked up in shape. But man, he got that for this. Like, holy God! Like, you don't need a rubber suit with fake muscles on it for this guy. He's a real deal, man.
oh, I mean, and of course, I tweeted this out before we recorded, but I actually like the Avengers Cap movie. Stop hating on it, guys. I don't think it's the best Cap suit of all of the movies, but I didn't think it was terrible like some people think it is. I don't understand the hate for it.
Oh, dude, I saw that. That's why I had to comment on it. Yeah, I don't get the hate for it either. It's a little ridiculous if you ask me. It's a suit, for crying out loud. And I thought it looked fine. And you can't translate the actual Captain America costume from the pages of the comic to make it work in a movie. I mean, without it looking like the thing he wore in the first Avenger when he's doing the USO shows. I mean, I honestly, when he put that on, the comics accurate costume, I popped because I'm like, oh my God, he's got the. To me, as a fan, I loved it, but you couldn't put him in that for the extent of an actual movie. It's cloth, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, I believe the in game suit is the best suit with the actual chainmail on the top. I like that one the best.
yeah, I agree. I'm trying to remember my. Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. I gotta be honest. I like the padded, like it looked like it was padded for like cold, like for the cold or something in the first Avenger with the helmet and everything and the
Yeah.
leather jacket. I actually dug that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's had a terrible suit yet.
No.
I think his suit for this movie is probably in some people's mind the worst one, but I don't think that it is. I like it for what it is. I like that they don't stray away from making it bright and colorful, and I think that it is intentionally made that way because it's made by them. You got to think about it. It's made by Shield for him, and it's the same idea that it's a propaganda thing again. And when he made his adjustments to the suit, it's him being his idea what Cap is again.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Talking about suits, man, Thor's suit changes over the course of time as well. And to be honest, the big red cape, the body armor, the armbands and stuff, every bit of this should look like, oh my God, what are they making this guy wear? But it fits. It just seems to work. Like, Tony calls him Point Break in this, which sticks. And again, we talk about callbacks and laying the groundwork. That's referenced later in Thor Ragnarok in a hilarious way as the password to the ship. Uh,
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Um, I think they did a great job with the Hemsworth suit. The only thing I don't like is he doesn't wear the helmet enough for me.
Yeah.
I think he should wear the helmet more in the movies. I really enjoy that he did the sleeveless look that is very close to the Ultimates look without the
Yes.
cape in this. He used that while they were on helicarrier a lot. I thought that was very intentional. Of course, the cell that Loki is in that we find out is for Hulk is straight out of Ultimates 2. Um, Even Thor getting trapped in it towards the end, all of that is straight out of Ultimates 2.
Right.
But yeah, I really enjoy Hemsworth as Thor. I don't know. I don't know how you got a problem with it. I mean, this is again like we see him do some cool stuff as Thor in his movie, but like some of the action sequences with him in this, he looks great. I mean, the way he uses Mjolnir throughout this thing looks great. Every time he calls Mjolnir, it looks cool. When he stands there and waits for it, and
Yeah.
then just cracks Hulk across the face with it.
It's great.
Looks awesome.
And then throws it to Hulk, so he'll grab it, and then he tries to pick it up, and he's crushing the ground beneath his feet on the helicarrier.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. So I'm watching the death scene now of Coulson, and I don't know if you kept up with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They brought him back, but I'm not sure how. Was it a clone thing that happened with him, or do you know how they did that?
I remember, but I haven't seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in a long time. From what I understand, he was really dead. They used like alien technology to bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
There's this really creepy scene in one of the episodes where there's this machine like literally like digging in his skull and in his brain, and he's like, let me die, and it's just like digging and bringing him back to life. It's really, really creepy and bizarre to watch.
I mean, this guy had the least amount to do of anybody in terms of physical stuff. He got to do some things, but the appeal of this character is Clark Gregg, obviously Agent Phil Coulson. He is the glue, whether anyone knows it or not. He's the one that's popping up in these other Marvel films. And the first time we saw him was in Iron Man, and it's just this feeling of like the way he marks out for Cap, and he's like, it's just great to have you here. And he just keeps talking to him, and he's telling him he's got trading cards. If you get time, it's a complete set, and he's fangirling over Cap like crazy, and like Cap isn't blowing him off, but he's so focused on what's going on that he's trying to have a conversation with him, but it's like, he just comes off as a fan. And all this plays into the death scene later with the bloody cards. Dude, Clark Gregg is so awesome. Like, I've seen him in other things, but my God, as Coulson, so good, man.
Yeah, I think there's the only time that we see him not be strictly business is in the scenes with Cap.
Yeah.
All the other people that he approached, he's always strictly business. And I mean, even when he dies, like I mean, you see it a lot if you watch the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, he is a competent agent. Like the whole laying there dying and standing there with this big huge gun, and he monologues long enough to shoot Loki with it. Like, that was great. Man, the Coulson stuff is a great example of why this movie succeeds, because they do a setup for something and they call back to it in the same movie. Like, they always do it perfectly. Like, when we first see Coulson, he comes out of the elevator and he talks to Pepper, and Pepper calls him Phil. And they set that up all the way so when he dies, that you see Tony is just like, who is this guy? I don't have time for this guy, the S.H.I.E.L.D. guy. Get him out of here. And so when he dies, like, it means something. And, that leads us all the way to, we get the great line when Tony falls out the window and an awesome armor flies down behind him, and he suits up and flies back up. And he says, man, you pissed somebody else off. His name was Phil.
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. So good. Yeah. And that's Marvel, man. Marvel taking a character who no powers, no abilities, except that he's one of the good guys. You feel like of everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D., he doesn't have any hidden ulterior motives. He's basically a good agent doing his job. No hidden agendas, nothing like that. And again, dude, to remind us all, who's the heel of this story? It's Loki. So you have Loki kill him in grand fashion. It wasn't he threw him up against the wall and broke his neck. No, dude, he impales him. To remind you, no matter how charmed you are by Hiddleston, he's still the villain.
This is a big Whedon trope. If you've watched any other Whedon things like Serenity or, Firefly or Buffy, this is a big Whedon trope to take a character that is seemingly obnoxious and make him this heart of gold character. And then once he dies, we hate it. Because this is totally Wash dying with the shrapnel coming through the window while he's saying, "I'm a leaf on the wind. Watch me soar."
Another good callback. Good stuff. And he's the thing that brings them together. Now, we find out later, because of Agent Hill, played by Kobe Smulders, who was in How I Met Your Mother. Did you ever get into that show, by the way?
No, not really.
It's funny because I got into it because of Barney. I'm trying to remember his name. Neil Patrick Harris, who is great in that freaking show. He's so the highlight of that whole thing. And he's so awesome. But I got into that show. So I was already familiar with her. So when she showed up, I'm like, because my wife watched it with me and we went to see this. I'm like, look, there she is. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I don't even know that we knew she was going to be in this. But yeah, she points out to Nick Fury later that, I happen to know those cards were in his desk. And Fury's like, well, they needed that. They needed this to bring them together. He's right. And even Coulson, upon his death, basically all but said this had to happen. They needed this. He knew it in his last moments. This is going to bring the team together, because to that point they'd been arguing and not been getting along at all.
But that's just how well this movie is made, because it's like Coulson is Coulson, but Coulson is still doing a job. And it's the same thing with Fury. Fury, we have grown to like Fury. We've grown attached to Fury because he's not just a cog, but at the same time, he's a government guy. He's manipulative. And this was a perfect example of how he's manipulative, but he has good intentions.
Yeah. That brings us to Sam Jackson. Nick Fury himself, not David Hasselhoff. I don't see anybody losing sleep over that.
Oh man! By far, my favorite Nick Fury scene in this movie is the council decides to send the jet out to nuke New York, and he runs out and he shoots the first ship down with the rocket launcher, and then the other one takes off, and he takes this handgun out of his pocket, and he's like, "Should I? Nope, nobody." Puts it away.
Yes. It's great because there's this scene where he takes his gun out and he's shooting. You're like, what are you shooting at? I forget what he's shooting at. I can't remember if this movie or not, but I'm like, you just took a handgun out to shoot at this ship or whatever it was. But yeah, it's instinct for him, right? It's funny because we didn't, in timeline order, Captain Marvel was the second film after Captain America: The First Avenger. But in terms of the release here, Captain Marvel had not appeared yet. So we didn't see Nick Fury's backstory until that film, which I still feel they didn't handle awesome as I was hoping they would. But he's in his element here. And the fact that he's tying everyone together, bringing them together, I don't know. He's so good at what he does. He's the perfect Nick Fury. I don't know, man. Again, I go back to the idea of that. Who else could have played this character? I don't know, dude. The fact that it was drawn in the books as out of respect to Sam Jackson, because at the time it was like, why can't Nick Fury look like Sam Jackson? And it's so funny how things worked out, man.
Yeah, from the second Mark Millar made Nick Fury look like Sam Jackson in Ultimates, the casting was already there. You knew it was going to come at some point. And I will die on the hill that Sam Jackson is possibly the greatest character actor of all time. And I think he is one of the best actors ever. I don't care what anybody says. You can throw the jokes out there, snakes on a plane. I would defy you to name another actor that has been a part of every single popular franchise there is. Jurassic Park, Star Wars, MCU. He's been everywhere. He has been a part of everything. I mean, when you think of all of these amazing movies that he's been a part of, I think he does not get enough credit for just all of the work he's done. Hardest working man in Hollywood, it might be.
Yeah, good point. He doesn't age. He hasn't aged in 20 years. Like, I don't know how he does it, but he looks the same today as he did in Pulp Fiction, I think.
I mean, yeah, the Pulp Fiction, Die Hard. I mean, yeah, you can keep going. He's been all over the place.
True. Die Hard, there's another franchise. Yeah, good call. Yeah. So a couple that we've not touched on here, Eric Selvig, which is Stellan Skarsgård, always good, always believable. Just feels like a doctor to me. I mean, he's doing his part. He's smart, and you know what's funny, dude? I was talking about this earlier during the course of this episode. The fact that there's circumstances to this movie. There's things that are getting callbacks years after this movie comes out. I mean, one of the immediate things is that Eric Selvig goes nuts, and we see it in Thor 2: The Dark World, and it's great. He's streaking at Stonehenge, and he's out of his mind. They lock him in an insane asylum because a god was in his head, in his words. Like, man, what a great idea to branch off into the rest of the MCU with what happens in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Selvig serves his part in this movie. I think it's a great callback to Thor. It's somebody that knows Asgardian lore and knows something about the science around it. So I thought it was a perfect way to put him back in and keep him in the MCU as a character.
And to just round it out here, we only see Pepper for a short time, but Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. Dude, again, I keep going back to the idea of chemistry, but her and Downey have so much chemistry. And it's funny because you see them from a distance together and you're like, these two? Because it's almost like physically they don't really go together. But then she's got that innocence about her. Like, she's strong, yet she's vulnerable at the same time. And, you know, she's the one really that we see that really first breaks down Tony Stark. I mean, you know, you can argue that the cave did it. Nearly getting killed did it. Seeing the guy that he was in prison with getting killed before his eyes did it. All those things open the door for the man he would become when he gets back to the States. But Pepper's the one that can really break him down. And, of course, they end up falling in love. But I thought she was using just the right amount here. I mean, just as a setup. And then we see her later when Tony is going up out of the stratosphere to stop this alien threat. We see her on the plane and she's panicking and whatnot. I mean, I don't know, dude. I just think that her role in the MCU has been maybe undervalued at times. I think she's just very good at what she does.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of foreshadowing in that phone call. I think there's a lot of foreshadowing in them when she's on the plane and he first goes up. Man, there's a lot of foreshadowing throughout this entire movie. And I mean, some of it might not have been intentional because some of these movies weren't even thought of yet. But just the fact that they were able to link back to this scene all the way here or all the way over there and then give us this reward for it. I mean, we talked about Cap and Tony's exchange, and I know it's been memed to death, but just the foresight to take that exchange and call back to it in Avengers Endgame was just brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, the line of everything special about you came out of bottle. No, he's worthy, and that's why he lifted the hammer. He was always worthy. He's always the guy. It was never the serum. It was always the man. And we see that in Falcon and Winter Soldier as well. You can give somebody like John Walker the serum, but he is not Steve.
Right.
And it's the same thing with Tony. It's like you would never take the sacrifice play. Yeah, he would. He would think that he was taking a nuke in there without knowing he could come back. And he would use the gauntlet to save the world, even though he had a child at home.
Yeah, and he's making the comment, you're not the guy to lay down the wire and save someone else. And at the time, he's right. He's not the guy. And until we see at the end, like you said, this could be his demise. This could be the end of Tony Stark forever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that was a great way to show the audience why these two characters are special, but also inform just what their relationship did for them as characters and how both of them play a role in each other's lives. I mean, when we first meet Tony, there is no inclination that he wants a quiet life and that he wants to not be a hero anymore or that he wants to be a father. Those are all things that you would think Steve wants.
right.
And so when he gets those things to sacrifice it, it's just still handled so well. Um, I mean, and there's stuff here with Steve that you wouldn't guess right away because we've only got one movie with him, and I just think in all of those exchanges with Steve, like it just does so much to bolster this character in just one movie.
And by the end of this film, we see the evident friendship that has happened between these two guys. And are they drinking buddies? Probably not. Are they? Let's go catch a movie? No, but they've got a mutual level of respect that maintains until Civil War, and then everything comes unraveled again. Even
Yeah,
worse, much worse than what we saw here.
yeah, and I mean, I think that again, there's so many foreshadows here. The fact that there is clearly a mutual respect. There are things that Steve can do that Tony cannot do, and he trusts Steve to do that. I mean, again, one of the smaller, quieter lines when they all do the revolving shot and they're all in the middle of Manhattan, and he goes, "Captain, call the play." It's
Ah, it's good
awesome.
stuff.
Or when he kept telling them, put the suit on, let's go around. And it's such a funny line in this movie of it's ego, testosterone, let's fight. But when we finally actually get them fighting in Civil War, it's sad and it has all of this seriousness to it. And it's just so well done, man.
It's so weird because when that happens in Civil War, you don't want to see it. Like you don't want to see him fight. I was thinking,
Yeah,
no, don't let this happen. When in this movie, I'll be like, cool, let's see it.
yeah. I mean, they do such a good job of building this relationship with each other. One of my favorite Captain America and Iron Man exchanges is not in a movie; it's from a comic book, and I mean, I think it's a mutual respect, but they also know each other so well, and it's from an Avengers book written by Hickman, and they have this dilemma where Tony makes this secret cabal to deal with all of these world changing events, and it's like an Illuminati type thing. And he has
Yes, I
all of these
remember
really
that.
smart guys on the
Yeah.
group, but he would never invite somebody like Steve because Steve is not a logic guy. He's a morals guy. He's an ethics guy, um, and so when they find out this thing is happening, all these worlds are colliding, and it's going to eventually cause the destruction of the universe. And so he tells Steve about it, and he tells him like, "This is what we have to do. We have to destroy the other world, or it's going to collide with ours." And Steve does what Steve would do. He goes, "We cannot do that. We cannot be like a Thanos. We cannot be like a Galactus." That's not his exact words, but that's what he means. We cannot be destroyers of a world. That's not who we are. We're not gods. And it's like a pause in that scene, and Tony goes, "Why do you always do this? Why do you always have to make it so hard?"
That's great. That's great because Tony has presented the problem. He's presented a solution, and Cap stops. He goes, "Nope, nope, we can't. Got to think about this." Yeah. Wow. And it's their differences that makes it work. The fact that they could come together to do anything with as different backgrounds as they have, like we said earlier, one's privileged, one was not. I mean, yeah, it's weird that these guys even end up being friends to begin with. That's good stuff. We got to talk about this fight scene, man. We got to talk about this before we take this thing home, because like until we saw Infinity War and then Endgame, Endgame best battle scene that I've ever seen. Just the scope of it and how huge it was. And I said the same thing about Infinity War until that happened. So yeah, the Battle of New York, the thing that was referenced in the Marvel Netflix shows, the thing that was referenced later. We saw the at the beginning of the Spider-Man flick. It's been talked about really throughout the whole MCU for the rest of the period of these movies. The Battle of New York. It's when the entire city was brought crashing down. It's so good. I mean, it's make this movie a few years earlier and it's still incredibly bad taste because of 9/11. But I think there was enough time put there. I mean, it was 11 years after the fact. Enough time, in my opinion. Of course, I'm not from New York. Maybe I wouldn't feel that way. But man, the scope of this thing, how big this is, to see them, like you said, that revolving shot. This end scene has so much going on, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, they managed to cram so much into this fight. I mean, there's so many cool moments, like um, Steve standing down all of the Chitauri on the ground, and he's getting ready to fight all of them, and then Tony swoops in, and they have that combo scene where he deflects the repulsor off his shield and kills a bunch of them. It's so good. The of course all the stuff we see Hawkeye do, and of course that we talked about earlier. Nat holding her own. Um, Thor
Cap,
and Hulk fighting together.
yes. Cap telling the cops what to do, and the cop says, "Why should we listen to you?"
Even at the very beginning when Cap gives them the marching orders and tells everybody what to do, tells Hulk to go smash. None of that gets old. I don't care how many times I see the movie. All of it still gets the same reaction out of me.
Good stuff. And then, Tony calls Hawkeye Legolas, which happens so quickly that you almost miss it. And then you go back, oh, that's a Lord of the Rings reference. I get it now, So that's like a flashback to Steve on the bridge of the helicarrier talking about, I got that reference. I actually got that one. That was me for that,
Yes. There's so many great moments in this fight scene. Um, the, Nat coming to Steve and going, this isn't gonna do it. None of this means nothing until we close the portal, and her taking the time to figure out how to close the portal. All of that, it's just so good because it just shows that everybody is an integral part of the team.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, just Tony doing the sacrificial play and then going into the portal. And every time I see it, I'm kind of iffy about destroying the ship just somehow deactivates the entire army. That's kind of weird. The only thing I can think of is that it causes an EMP that, the armor hurts them. The armor they have on, it hurts them. That's the only thing I can think of. That's the only plausible reason I could think that destroying the ship would kill them. But yeah, there's so much great stuff in those scenes, man. There's so much stuff that I didn't think we would ever see on film. Even just like that small sidetrack of Cap going into that building and saving all those people. Just perfectly done.
And, 2 words, man, fan service. This whole closing sequence feels like nothing but fan service. It feels like a bunch of dudes, and middle-aged guys sitting in a room somewhere or behind the cameras going, oh, it'd be cool if we could put this in there too, because they're all comic book guys, or at least they enjoy it. And dude, this is made for comic book fans. I mean, it entertains everybody, a lot more people, but God, man, it's so good. It's a comic book come to life. It like legit. You know what I mean? Oh my God, so good.
It's really, really good. I mean, Loki never gets lost in this thing. Loki still has moments in it. Loki still managed to have a moment after he just gets completely creamed and embarrassed by Hulk.
Right.
I mean, the scene at the very end when they say that they're not done, we still got work to do, and then it shows them all standing over Loki. It's just iconic shot.
It's all the same to you. I'll be having that drink now. It's good stuff. And I'm to the scene where Banner turns and says, "I'm always angry," and then turns. And dude, I remember seeing this in the theater. When that happened, everybody in the audience went, "Oh!" Everyone's going crazy and like screaming at the screen. It was so awesome.
Yeah, and I mean that just brings up of course, the driving point in all of this. Seeing Avengers movies in theaters is just it's so much fun. Just watching how other people react to these things, watching other fans of these things. Whether it be people that are just introduced to the movies and they're like, "Oh, I know that guy," or people that are fans of the comics and sitting and watching them with so much glee, watching these things on screen. It's just so much fun.
The energy of the theater, the energy of the live crowd. You can't beat it, man. These movies
Yeah,
are
I
made
mean,
to be enjoyed together, you know?
yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, Endgame wouldn't be what it is if we didn't get to see it in theaters and watch it together.
Oh, yeah.
And just, I mean, I saw it twice in movies, and every time just watching how people react to that, the final fight and everybody coming through the portals and just all of the emotion of it. It's just really, I mean, it's just really great that they've managed to pull this together. And I mean, I know these are all big corporate undertakings, but I just think the fact that they've made something so special to so many people, it's huge.
Dude, do you know, and you already know, you're a smart guy. Uh, you know how easy it is to screw this up?
Yes.
I mean, you know how hard it is to, folks, can you listen? We've had how many years of the MCU? We're up to what, 13? Oh my God, it's been 13 years since this thing started. That is insane to me. I'm so old. Uh, you know how easy it is to get this stuff wrong? How many times have other people gotten it wrong? This, I don't care about how well the other movies did. Avengers could have tanked. This thing could have been laughed off the screen. I mean, I
This,
still think it
yeah,
could have been.
yeah. This is one of the most ambitious film projects that I've ever seen, and the
Yes.
fact that they did it and they managed to do it well is just it's crazy. I mean, you can nitpick and you could pick things apart about it that don't work. You could say this is fan service or that is fan service, but just the fact that they've made something that is so enjoyable, I mean, you got to give them their credit for that.
Yeah, and it works. And there's been many times I went to see a film that the trailer looks amazing, and it's the right cast, and it's the effects are great, and the music's there. You go see it, and I mean, I have went to see a film and have legit laughed out loud and had to quiet myself down among other people because I'm like, I
Yeah,
cannot get over how bad this is. This is so bad. I mean, I've
yeah,
gotten up and left in the middle of a film before because I looked at my wife and said, "Are you done?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think I'm done." And we just split and went and caught the tail end of another film because it was that bad. Like,
yeah,
it's easy to screw this up, man. But man, these guys found the formula, Phil. They found the formula to make this work. And if you needed more proof or any proof, watch the original Avengers, and that shows you they got the formula for this figured out.
yeah. Um, yeah. I'm just sitting thinking. I mean, there's so many things you could say great about this movie. Just so many great performances in this movie. Um, I don't think people say enough how great the Avengers theme in this thing is. And
Oh
I
my
didn't realize that until all the way till we got the trailer for Infinity War. And it's this dark trailer. And then when it hits the Avengers theme at the end of the trailer, goosebumps. And
yeah.
even every time I watch Avengers back and the theme kicks in and they're getting ready to do something like do the the group suit up, it's just so cool, man.
Yeah. I just saw the scene where the Hulk is running through the office building because they're all like scared of the ship coming at him, and he's just suddenly tearing through there and dives out the window. Oh my God. Man, this thing works, dude. I'm telling you, this whole thing works. I'm so biased, man. I'm so biased because I'm in an office filled with comic book memorabilia and collectibles and books and graphic novels and 6.5 long boxes packed full to the max and bags of comics behind me. I'm so I'm so biased. But honestly, dude, the hardcore biased comic book fans are the ones whose opinions count on stuff like this because this is our jam. If we tell you this is a letdown, this is a letdown. And when we tell you it's a hit, it's a hit. I mean, to me, it's a different thing than Star Wars because people from all walks of life, not that comic books don't attract everybody, right? But it's different. Opinions on Star Wars change with time. But a good comic book film is a good comic book film. And diehard fans will tell you what's good and what's not, you know?
Yeah. Man, I mean, I'm with you. I've been a Marvel fan since I was really, really young. I've always been a big Marvel fan. And so, just watching the universe come together in comics in some ways. And I mean, even being one of the guys that read the Ultimate Comics when it initially dropped, and seeing all the callbacks to that in this movie, and just seeing so many things that rewarded us as readers, um, and didn't talk down to us, and then it also tried to bring other fans in as well, just moviegoers, and go like, look, this is cool. We're doing something cool over here. You should be watching it. Man, it's awesome. And that's why sometimes when I look at people complain online about how, oh, now you guys care about comics, you didn't care about comics, and I get it. Listen, I know for some of us when we were getting teased and all these other kind of things in middle school, and going, oh, you guys like that, that's lame. Yeah, it's whatever. I know some people want to hold on to that resentment, but my opinion is totally different. Every time I see people do that, and I see people that are now like Rocket Raccoon fans, like, what?
Yeah.
I sit and I think, we won. We always were right. We were
Yep.
ahead of the curve.
100% right. The nerds have inherited the earth. It's ours now. It's awesome. And dude, I'm like you. Dude, when I was in school, the two things that I was into that I'm ironically enough still into because I'm a massive man child, pro wrestling and comic books. I didn't tell anybody because I knew better. Because I got picked on all the time, made fun of, called names. Legit. It was it wasn't embarrassing for me. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to get made fun of. And I don't think that this gets brought up enough. If you are in your mid 30s, 40s, or older, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. In your 20s, no, probably not so much. If you're in your 20s listening to this, you're cool. You're good because you're raised in the world with the MCU at this point. No, you're good. But like the rest of us, no, we weren't. So yeah, to Phil's point, man, dude, I heard everything. Like I didn't tell anybody. If someone said, hey, what are you drawing there? I kept it to myself. Oh, it's just something. And I'd hide it. There's a reason why fanboys in high school hung out in cliques and didn't have a lot of friends because we were scared to tell people. I know it sounds funny. It wasn't funny when I was a kid. I didn't like getting bullied, man. And this is one of the things I got bullied over was my love of comic books and pro wrestling. So, yeah, we've inherited the planet, Phil. Be strong.
Yeah, we've won. I told people long before Guardians was a thing, and Rocket was my favorite character from the books. I was like, Rocket's gonna take over the world, and watching him do it has just been amazing. The same thing with Miles Morales. Watching Miles Morales become one of the most popular characters in pop culture, it's amazing. Same thing with T'Challa. I never thought we would get a Black Panther movie. Watching Black Panther take over the world and become $1 billion franchise, man, it was just so rewarding. I could not hold on to any resentment. It just felt so good to see these characters get what I felt like they deserved from the beginning.
Yeah, and like, dude, to your point, you could hold on to resentment if you want to. You could be bitter. There's a sense of being bitter. I'm enjoying this stuff too much. I love this stuff too much. I'm in the bag for this stuff. Like,
Yeah, have
yeah,
have fun, man. We have it better than we ever have, man. I you can go and see movies about anybody other than just Batman and Superman. That was just it for at one point. You can go see movies about anything, and they can be bad, and you can sit on the internet and complain about it because it's bad. But it's still a movie that exists. You still get to talk about it.
yeah, it's out in the world. Yeah, crazy. I never. All right. All right. As a kid, I hoped, I grew up with friends that read comic books and we hung out with our little cliques in high school. I had one little clique in high school. There was like four of us. That was it. And we were all comic book nerds, right? We hoped for an X-Men film. We hoped for an MCU. We hoped for one film to do Marvel justice. We never thought about Guardians of the Galaxy. No
No,
chance. Did we think about Iron Man? Sure. Did we think about Cap? Sure. Guardians? What? No. And like, dude.
No. I mean, come on, man. That's why I'm like, this is just too much fun for me to be angry. At some point, I did think it was annoying that people all of a sudden cared, but there's just too much real emotion for this stuff because there are so many things that I love this medium. There's so many things from it that I have so many great memories from. I mean, I remember sitting in the theater when Marvel first got Spider-Man back, and they played the original Spider-Man theme song over the Marvel banner, and I was sitting there with tears welling up in my eyes
Oh, that's
because he's
good.
home, and I was like, "This is where he belongs. This is where he always belongs."
Yeah, well said. This is where he's always belonged. Yeah. God, I wish that deal would come back, man, because good Lord. That's another podcast, but jeez. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that's poor it's due to poor deals, poor licensing deals. Like, Stanley at one point was licensing out everything he could possibly do, not for money, but to get the characters out into the entertainment world in some fashion. So as a
Yeah, and I
result of
mean,
that, Hulk was stuck in, they were all stuck in Fox, right? Now they're back, and it's crazy.
yeah, then there's so many ways to look at that. I mean, you can go into just how crazy my life is. Like, at one point I met Stan Lee and I took a picture next to him. He didn't say much, but um, I did the Spider-Man whip next to him. I held my hand up and like I was gonna do web shooters, and he said "attaboy." And so again, when I'm sitting there in the theater watching Marvel get Spider-Man back, and it's like, we won, Stan. We did it.
Oh, that's great. What a great thing to happen. He was at a con we went to one year in Charlotte, and it was me and a friend of mine and my kid. My kid at the time was, I don't know, 7, maybe 8, maybe 9, maybe 8, something like 7 or 8. He's so little, and we were with another buddy of mine, and his little girl was with us. So we got 2 little kids. The line is wrapping around all the tables. It's massive. It's $100 for an autograph and all this. And is it worth it? Yeah. Did I stand in line? No. Do I regret it? Absolutely. At the time, it was like we got these little kids and we're tired. We've been here all day. He didn't show up until like lunchtime or something. And yeah, I regret it. But like, man, I really regret it. You know what I mean? Dude, just that moment you have with him, just that singular moment. And he saw so many people that day, right? But
Yeah.
like, that's something you'll never forget.
I mean, again, like I've always been a big Marvel kid, so Stan is like a personal hero to me. Like Stan created my favorite character. Like if there's no Stan, there's no Spider-Man. So like to me, Stan will always be one of those guys that is like on a pedestal for me. Um, so yeah, I mean, just and that's another big part of all of this, just seeing things that he created. Um, get so much love in the world, like worldwide, and to turn into this big, massive thing. It's amazing.
And there's a lot of talk that's been had over the years about how much of a role did he play and so and this creation, that creation. The artist was more responsible. But my thing is, his name is attached to everything it's attached to because it's going to be attached to it because it should be. And if he had no input, if there was nothing there, his name wouldn't be attached to these things. So how much input do you have? I don't know if we know except the writers and artists who actually worked with him during those years. But I don't know of a more prolific creator of our time. And I'm talking, you could say Stephen King, you could say, oh my God, who?
Yeah, you can put Jack Kirby up there.
Sure, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, again, I'm a Marvel guy, and that's not to say that Kirby didn't do plenty for Marvel, but come on, man. I'm like I said, I'm to this day, I still draw Spider-Man when I get a chance because of what him and Steve Ditko did.
yeah,
So it's just it's a special thing for me. Stan is always going to be the guy, in my opinion.
yeah. And without him, we don't have this movie. Without him,
No,
we don't have the MCU. This guy, put a smile on his face and went out into the world and made comic books accessible and made it not lame, made it not nerdy. And everybody he encountered said, I like that Stan. He's a salesman, and he was 100% salesman. But man, the stuff he was hawking was really good stuff, and he knew it too. I mean, we might could have wrapped this thing up earlier when you compared this thing to Star Wars, man, because what an appropriate comparison that was. This is so good. I mean, we got a total of 4 Avengers movies. This, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame, right? So there, you read stories and you hear possible rumors. They're putting the Young Avengers together, right? Like, and it's like, well, they're doing one character at a time, and some you know about, some maybe you hadn't thought about. And I don't know, man. I mean, there's been talk of we're going to get an Avengers 5. What's your take on that, man? How do you think that plays out for the MCU now?
I think there'll definitely be an Avengers 5. It just depends on when they want to do it. I think they're taking their time with all of the Disney Plus stuff and assembling characters that we care about. And I think at some point you're going to get an Avengers team. It might not be the original 6, but I think there are going to be people on that team at that point that we're just going to be clamoring to see on screen together.
And, spoiler alert, kids, Tony Stark's no longer with us. So, I don't know. But all right, so I'm such a fan of this guy. I'm such a fan of the Avengers, the MCU as a whole. I'd love to see a 3D projection at one point. I would love to see, now he's the voice in the suit like Jarvis was. Now he's here in spirit, not in body and mind, but in spirit, or maybe in mind. I don't know. I mean, dude, do you go down that road, or you just leave it alone because his sacrifice saved the entire universe, saved the world? You know what I mean?
Oh, I think he's definitely going to come back as a hologram, because it sounds like they're doing Ironheart, and he was a hologram in that book. I can see them doing it. I can see them doing a number of other things with his voice later. And I don't think it hurts his sacrifice. I think it just means he's Tony, and Tony would plan for everything.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be back in some way, just like I feel like Steve will be back in some way. He might not suit up and become Cap again, but he'll show up again at some point and do something.
And it's funny because Tony's words leading into Endgame, or in Endgame, he said, part of the journey is the end, right? I mean, as much as we enjoyed this, as much as I've enjoyed doing this particular episode, as much as we enjoyed talking about the MCU, at the time, we weren't thinking this. At least I wasn't. This is going to end one day. These guys are going to do what we all do. They're going to get older. Eventually, you're not going to look like Cap anymore. You may not look like Tony anymore. In comic book continuity, the books that you're reading today that you read 30 years ago happened last year or 5 years ago. The continuities, the concept of time and comic continuity is all wackadoodle. Well, it is in the movies too. Now, the MCU is held strict. Right now, the MCU is 5 years ahead of us, which means it's 2026, right? So, because it's 5 years after. So they've so far have held true to a certain time frame. But dude, at the time, we weren't thinking about this is going to end one day. We were just happy to get it. So the fact that it is, for this particular cast all together in the same movie, is there a chance? Or do you think that's it? You talked about seeing the 6 of them together on screen at the same time. Will we get this again in some fashion at all, you think?
What do you mean, like the original 6?
Yes. Well, I mean, Black Widow's gone, right?
Yeah, I don't think we'll get the original 6 again. Unless there's like some, big finale they can do, but I don't think you can do a finale any bigger than Endgame. I feel like that was it.
And with the end credits, the end credits kind of said this is it too, right?
Yeah, I feel like there's at some point we might get cameos, but I don't think we'll see the 6 of them as the Avengers again.
It's crazy just to see how far we've come since this film. Just this film. It's going to be 10 years old next year. I don't know if I even could have told you how old this film was. It seems like it's still brand new and fresh to me. When you watch it, it's only 9 years, which is not exactly a lifetime. It so holds up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So good. I do think you're right. I think we'll be talking about this like we talk about Star Wars for years to come. we're not done talking about the MCU, kids. One of the M's in the 6M is Marvel, of course. So we've got a lot more to talk about, a lot more stuff to cover, things we've only just briefly touched on, things we've talked about in great length. We'll come back around and circle back to later at some point. But until we get to those episodes, folks, we're going to wrap this up. So, Phil, if you can, give me your last word on the Avengers.
I think up to that point, it was the best comic book movie of its time. Like, I know some people hold up Dark Knight at that point, but to me, Avengers is it. I mean, there have been comic book movies that have topped it since then, but man, to do something as ambitious as bring all these characters together and do it so well, I don't know if we'll see anybody start a franchise on such a high note again.
I mean, and what's scary about this, folks, it only gets better from here, which is a massive statement considering how phenomenally good this film is. So if it's been a minute since you've seen Avengers, please go watch it again. And if you've never seen it, welcome to the world of Marvel. Hopefully we just introduced you to a great universe of films here that you can go check out. And start with this one. Why not? You can always, travel back and catch the other ones as they happen. So hopefully we'll see more of the Avengers coming up. I'm looking forward to a part 5, whatever that looks like, because as long as it's got the spirit of this film, I don't think we can go wrong with it. And that is the Avengers.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.